Hi, and welcome to Career Mobility with James Mcilvena for February 2024. Welcome back, James. Have you had a good break?
I had an amazing break. I don't know where January went, but I got some family time down in Melbourne and some time in Japan in. So I returned refreshed and relaxed.
Fantastic. I know you love a bit of snow action in January, and I know that the snow was amazing from some other friends that were over there. Did you get some powder snow over there?
I absolutely did. Me and about the 2.5 other million Australians, which descended on the Japanese hills this season. So
Yeah.
interesting stat I heard. Apparently, Japan has now taken over Bali as the #1 destination for Australian tourists, and it
Wow.
very much appeared that way this year.
Home from home. Fantastic. Love it. Now, today, obviously, beginning of the new year, this is our first sort of interview for this year. Really keen to talk with you about, what's happening in the market. It's really, I've been back now sort of 3 weeks or so. And, for the first couple of weeks, it was quite quiet really out there. It was kind of unknown really what was going to happen this year. But the great thing is in the last week or so, we've started to really see some great articles and insights into what's going on in the market. So I thought it'd be great to get your take on this. So the sort of job market predictions for 2024. But also we'll share some tips as well around how people can leverage those. And the great news is a lot of that can be done, of course, within their career transition packages with LHH and their coaches, which is great. But just to kick off, I know you have recently, in the last week or so, actually been interviewed for HRD Australia. So I would love for you to share with us as a kickoff some of those things that you've been seeing, basically those workplace trends, and what's front and center for this year.
Yeah, so the interview was specific to talking about some of the trials going on both globally and locally about the 4-day work week, and
Yeah.
specifically not, actually just giving people an extra day off, the ability to sort of find productivity and follow what they call 100-80-100 rule, which is you actually find 20% of productivity to give yourself that extra day off, but you're still achieving 100% of outcome and results.
Yeah.
And so while the discussion was about that, and I don't want to go into detail on the 4-day work week, it was part of a broader discussion on trends. And the reason for those trends are, when it comes to the employment market this year, there's still a bit of variation in which way employers will go. But two things are absolutely essential and critical and acknowledged.
Yeah.
One is they're going to need to sort of restart hiring after a pretty lean year in 2023. And as a subset of that, that can be one of two things. The amount of hiring, the amount of uplift in hiring will either come from them getting much better at retention policies, or it's going to need to come from external market. And so the 4-day work week was just one of many potential tools that employers have to look at in order to be able to aid retention. Others are things like better ability to provide upskilling and reskilling to stay skills current for individuals, flexible working practices. And so that doesn't just mean setting policy around hybrid working arrangements. It means actually really properly looking into some of the reported burnout and some of the things that people actually need to be happy, healthy, and productive in the workplace. So it was started specific, but it was actually part of a much broader discussion on where and how are organisations setting their strategic course this year of making sure they've got the talent they need.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, already starting to speak to employers, and it's interesting even just looking at the job boards as well, and just starting to get a sense of the market. It's interesting this year to look at how much is a hybrid environment, how many people are still able to work. Perhaps they'll take a break, but they'll also work while they're on their break. All these different things, like all of these things, are becoming kind of a part of the fabric really of how people work in 2024 and moving forward. And again, all of this has really kind of come about as a result of COVID. So it's not surprising that you're having these conversations and that organizations are navigating this now, and really starting to bed it into policy, which is interesting to see. So interesting to see how that plays out this year. So let's have a look at some of the job market predictions. What sorts of things have you sort of started to see, James, as well, that you think are going to be those sort of top things that people will be working on this year?
Yeah, so I think a couple of the key things people are looking at. One is what is the impact of automation? So generative
Mm,
AI is like a hot topic of discussion at the moment, particularly
yeah,
because we've seen the takeoff in discussion around utilization of chat GPT and it moving from a few people understanding the importance of it. I think that is only one example of generative AI, but actually workplace application of generative AI. And it feels like this discussion has been going on for a very long time. And we know and we deal with, and some people listening to this might actually be listening to this because it was actually automation which created efficiencies, which actually meant that there was like job reductions. So that will be a trend because of two things. The trend will be they need to actually hire more people who actually understand and have the ability to be ready for change and be agile. And that's driving one of the secondary discussions, which is recruiting for background and experience versus recruiting for skills versus
yeah.
recruiting for attitude. And so there is a real debate after almost, and having spent a lot of my career in talent acquisition, after almost being bored of the fact that every organization recruited exactly the same way with a behavioral interview for so many years, which of course is based on whatever you've done in the past are skills that are attributed to you, and therefore you should be able to demonstrate them to a high level in future. Bang, you're perfect for the job. Yeah,
Yeah.
there is finally a bit of a mix and a change up in actually how people are looking to hire, and those
Mm,
different camps are we hire for attitude because you get the right attitude, you can train the skills in, but
yeah.
also actually training for skills where there's deficiencies across the organization in the number of people who have that skill set. So hiring more for skill than background experience and what roles you've done in the past. And of course, there's still a group that are hiring based on background experience and prior roles. So it's starting to change the dynamic on how people are hiring. There's a lot of discussion around it. And then also the selection mechanisms that are used,
Yes.
depending on which way they're hiring.
Yeah, yeah. I think actually we'll end up speaking a lot more about this year, actually, James. That sort of, even when we look at some of the resources that are out there at the moment, I mean, we're going to share in the sort of show notes of this some details about some of those AI tools that are now available openly for anybody to go and use. And again, it's if you don't know how to use them, this is a perfect time to learn because it's definitely not going away. And you're right, it's everywhere at the moment. It's pretty much in every, most articles that you read, there's something that's a mention of AI. So it's definitely not going away. And if you're not across it, it's something to start to get your brain sort of wrapped around because there's so much that can help you. And we're going to talk a bit later in this discussion about that sort of productivity and efficiency that you can get with that as well. So we'll talk a bit more about that later. How about in terms of sort of things like, with the way the market's changing, what sorts of things have you seen, I guess, from the sort of information that you've been coming across in January?
Yeah, look, there is a broad opinion that after a pretty lean year in 2023 for
Mm,
hiring demand will increase. So I
yeah,
touched on at the start, whether that comes from retention or external hiring,
yeah,
um, but also that there will be segmentation of where sort of the hiring demand is greatest.
yeah,
Uh, and based on what I was just talking about, it comes as probably no surprise that those types of roles and industries where the person is at the center of what's being delivered. So service type environments, your professional services,
yeah,
healthcare, pharmaceuticals, those type of things will continue to be, seeing an uplift in hiring demand this year,
yeah,
as will a bit of a rebound in technology hiring. So there was a lot, and I meant a lot of redundancies in the technology sector last year. And so
yeah,
people are anticipating not same roles that were exited last year, but like more growth with new roles being introduced in technology sector this year. So I think there's a reason, a broad-based reason for people to be optimistic to see more job opportunity available in 2024 than what was last year. It's not saying it'll be back to the conditions that we had in sort of mid 2021, but there will
yeah,
definitely be some recovery, and the recovery will be slower in first half of the year with an expectation that there'll be really a more noticeable uplift in demand in H2 or the second half of this year.
Yeah. Just in the interest of time, again, we're going to start to talk about sort of how to leverage what's happening in the market at the moment. I will say, though, that there's a lot more going on in the market, and we'll make sure, as I say, those, awesome resources go into the notes. Please do have a listen to those or read of those after this session. There's so much more in there. And again, the more, we believe, don't we, James, the more you know about the job market and the more sort of intimate you become with it, the better you can navigate it, that's for sure. So definitely do those. Now, in terms of leveraging it, when we were chatting before, we always do this before we jump on. There are so many things, great things that we already do. The researching of your industry, working with your coach to update your skills, making sure that you understand the value you bring to the market, networking, all of these amazing things that are part of your program. So we just wanted to talk to you again, just to refresh, new year, think about those things that are going to really make the biggest difference this year in this job market. So I'd love your insights into that as well, James.
Yeah, I mean, there are two underlying factors that everyone should be looking for with their job search, because those things you mentioned are the core criteria. They are the things that our coaches will speak to every participant about. Nothing has changed from last year to this year. There is no update that, it's no longer important to network. Of course it is. It's still going to be your primary mechanism by which you find your next role. But the productivity and efficiency bit is, like, why wouldn't you? Let's say someone has agreed with their coach they're going to contribute or set aside 6 hours a day in their efforts, and they're able to actually, rather than spend a day and 6 hours just basically coming up with key responses to 6 common interview questions, they can use a tool like Interview AI, get that work done in an hour and a half and spend 4.5 hours setting up networking meetings. So productivity, efficiency, fast use of your time, not changing those core things that will help you get the role, but working a bit smarter, not harder, will actually free up time to allow you to do the things that are like higher value, but help you get the fundamentals in place, because you've got to have the fundamentals in place. And that's what every business, what every industry is going through right now. It's saying, how do we automate the lower value stuff, and how do we spend more time on the higher value stuff? Apply that to your job search.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we also mentioned before coming on was that, this whole thing about lifelong learning, really kind of making sure that you continue to be relevant in this market. And when we talked to, AI today, I think the important thing, though, is, there's so much information out there. And James, you and I we're chatting about the fact that we're constantly learning ourselves, like that you can't know everything. So again, what's your take on this? I'd love to again get your insight into this, because we both know that we're learning all the time. There's nothing wrong with kind of picking up new information. It's really important because it just makes you you have to do it to be relevant in today's market. It's just how it is.
Yeah, and I think the point you've made is the relevant point. How an individual applies that is sort of really up to them, but there has to be an understanding and a commitment to the importance of lifelong learning. And so whether that's, you find that audiobooks work particularly well for you because you've got travel, or you have a lot of time sort of walking the dog or whatever, or podcasts work better for you, or subscribing to articles work better for you, or jumping into LinkedIn and following and getting information on feeds, or Twitter, now X, is the best pathway. It really doesn't matter how. What matters is that there is a deliberate intention for lifelong learning and time set aside from it. And just as a finishing point there, I mean, even it can come from discussions with interesting people. So I mentioned before, like, I had that many interesting discussions with people, both that I knew and didn't know, in gondolas and chairlifts in Japan. And it's like, even just meeting new people and having different discussions as part of your networking will give you insights and lifelong learning. So I suppose my point at the end of all that is, find the thing that works best for you. If it's not working for you, try something different, but don't give up on it and don't forget about it, because it's what will help you now, but also keep it going once you land in a role, because it will also keep you relevant for the future.
Oh, that is such a key point. I think you're absolutely right. It doesn't stop, literally when you land. This is something to keep going. The market's changing all the time. So Really great to see you, and can't wait to share more insights as we move through the year.
Thanks so much. Looking forward to a great 2024 and more chats.
Cheers, James. Have a great day.
Thanks, DJ. Bye.